As people around the world contend with COVID-19, some of the most difficult challenges are for children and parents affected by school closings. For the Boston Public Schools, that began yesterday, and it could possibly continue until April 27th. To tell us about steps to help students with learning and access to meals is the school superintendent, Brenda Cassellius. Thank you very much for being with us, Superintendent.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I want to start with the decision process around this. I imagine people were thinking of closing for quite a while. There were downsides as well. So what changed that?
Well, once we started hearing about the pandemic, we started to really think, when is going to be our first case here in the United States? And then once we got our first case in Boston, we started to have conversations internally and then with the mayor's office as well. But last Wednesday was the tipping point, I think, when the president made his national address and put some restrictions on travel. We saw the cases in Boston and around Massachusetts go up a little bit. We also saw the NBA close their entire season. And then we had our first case at the Elliott School. And we knew we needed to take swift action.
What was the response like from parents when they finally said, the school's going to be closed for a week? That seemed like an eternity back then. How did they take it?
Well, parents had been watching the media. They had been watching the same news stations that you and I and watching the progression of this disease and virus. And so they were pressuring to close and to stay open. But then on Wednesday there was this real tipping point where they were starting to become more fearful and wanted us to close.
I imagine one thing that helped people back from closing schools was that many children have parents who cannot be home, at least not all the time. What's being provided for them?
So we are able to provide foods, services for them, and continuity of learning. And then the Boston city departments are all providing all other kinds of services for families. So for instance, with our homeless families and with families who are having difficulty with rent payments, they have the 90-day hiatus on evictions, and that's just fabulous. I'd like to see that be forever, but having 90 days is really a great start for our families and making sure that they're stable during this time, so that's really important. I know that there are health services and other services for legal services as well by the Lawyer for Civil Rights. So all kinds of different services that the community is pulling together for our families. You can go to boston.gov to get a list of those, and there's a new resiliency fund, so if there's the people who want to donate or volunteer, they can go to boston.gov, call 311, or for school-related matters, they can go to bostonpublicschools.org.
Yeah, I get the sense teachers are not all taking sabbaticals here. They're busy with things for the students. What exactly are they doing?
Well, for these first 3 days, teachers are working, preparing and getting ready. Some of them have their own family matters in which to deal with. A number of other school districts were closed in the area before the governor came out just the other day and closed all schools in the state of Massachusetts. And so right now we are going to be providing guidance this afternoon on what that learning is going to look like. We have provided 2 weeks of paper materials to students. Some schools have provided additional Chromebooks, but we will have Chromebooks for all students hopefully by next week. And also Wi-Fi will be available because of our terrific partnerships that we've been able to secure.
Chris, my first worry was that you might have students in homes that do not have internet connection. Maybe they don't have their own computer. Other than the Chromebooks, what about them?
Yeah, so we also have the Wi-Fi opportunity with the partners who have stepped up. Comcast has stepped up. We have Wi-Fi hotspots. We also, through some of our data providers, and then we have some of the hot cards, or I can't think of the name of the cards that they get as well. So we think we will be able to have every family that needs it having access to Wi-Fi.
What can a student do with a Chromebook exactly?
A whole lot. So our students already do work in the digital world, and they have what's called a digital backpack. And they work off of their Google framework, so they have Google Mail, so they can do Google Meetups and meet with their teachers virtually one-on-one or in whole groups. So we already see that through music. We see some of our music teachers practicing to do music lessons for students. We're also seeing some art lessons. We're seeing our students work on their math and their reading and their science projects through the Chromebooks. And then there are applications or software programs that we work with, like Lexia, who gave us all of their software for free during this time, which is absolutely incredible to see these tech companies step up and help out our kids so they can go online and work independently or work in groups.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Boston School Superintendent Brenda Cassellius. Superintendent, I know there are parents who are used to their kids being immersed in these digital objects and just sort of ignoring them, but for kids to learn, don't the parents have to do something, maybe give their child some structure to get through the day?
They do, absolutely. It was a great psychologist, James Comer, who said, "No significant learning happens outside a significant relationship." It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's that connectedness, and so we want to protect children from a sense of isolation during this time. So we really do want parents to be interacting with their children, peer-to-peer interactions. If there's an older sibling, working with the younger siblings, making sure that the children have quiet areas in the school, in the home. Usually that'd be better than not in the bedroom, and outside the bedroom. And a common place in the whole family is honoring the academic time in the household, and all screens are off, and except for during the academic time, making sure kids get outside to play, in the yard. If the weather's going to be nice, walk around the block, go down to your local park if you can, given the restrictions, if there are any new ones that are coming. But I think right now they can still go down to their local park and play. It's not a time for play dates, though, so it is, at home and doing these things and keeping your social distancing during this time. I think also reading and really getting into a series of books over the 7 weeks.
Just before the school closing decision, there was the news about the memorandum of agreement between the school department and the State Department of Education on a wholesale turnaround. These are problems that long predate your arrival here. What would you like to say about that?
Well, it was validating to see what was in the report from what I had been hearing from parents and families and teachers alike, and also students and community members who shared a lot of what was in there with me when I was on my 100-day tour. It also validates some of the data and research that had previously been done that I read during my interview and along as my study about the Boston Public Schools before I chose to become superintendent, and then what I actually observed as I was in classrooms and around. So I think that all of the things that are mentioned in the review are things that are in our new strategic plan. Super excited about our strategic plan, which is supposed to be finalized this next Wednesday, but the school committee meeting is canceled this Wednesday and rescheduled for next week virtually, because we do still want to have opportunity for the public to be engaged in that process. So we wanted to, during this week, take a break, and then next week give an opportunity, once we get the technology set up, to be able to have the school committee meeting virtually.
The findings reminded me that there were schools in Boston that were turned around, they got better, they relapsed, and the problem, at least part of it, was resources. This plan requires resources down the line. Given what's happening now with the virus, the economy, do you worry about those resources in the future?
So resources could be a challenge because of the economy, definitely. But the mayor has made a $100 million commitment to the schools over the next 3 years. It's really unprecedented for a superintendent to have a strategic plan that isn't dependent on a year-to-year budget. So because we had the $100 million up front, we have 3 years of big investments that we'll be able to make in our schools, and that's above and beyond any salary agreements that are going to be made. Because typically when you get a lot of investments, it goes to the 2% increase or the 4% increase in salaries, and then that makes it really difficult for the resources to get directly to kids. So we're really excited about the direction we're headed. I think that the strategic plan will be well resourced over the next several years, but this certainly can have a challenge in terms of the social emotional well-being of children. Their learning loss could be a factor in the strategic plan and moving forward, because we may have to do a little bit more and think a little bit different.
Speaking of learning loss, does it make sense to have MCAS this year, at least any time around the usual?
It does not make any sense to have MCAS this year. I just, I've been very public about my feelings about standardized testing overall. I think that it provides really good information at a larger level to us about how we gauge and how we should do our curriculum. So I think if they did do the MCAS, it would be simply for district level data so we could see where the learning loss was. But in terms of accountability for students and whether or not they get a diploma, I think that would be woefully unfair.
She mentioned finally, one more time, we should remind parents if they have any questions, there's someplace they can go either by phone or online.
Yeah, they can certainly always call their school. Hopefully they'll be checking in with their teachers here now weekly, if not daily in some of our schools. So that they can definitely do that. I think also email to their teachers and get answers, or they can go to bostonpublicschools.org and find us there. And then if you want city services, I think boston.gov or 311.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Boston School Superintendent Brenda Cassellius.